Today we're making bread pudding. Usually bread pudding is made with challah bread or brioche bread, but today I'm using my homemade pumpkin bread to make this bread pudding. I got some left over from a batch I made a couple of days ago, which is good because you want the bread you're using for bread pudding to be a couple of days old. This way it's nice and stale and it'll absorb all the custard we put into it, and it's just going to make it taste even better. So I'm going to start by cubing up this pumpkin bread. If you didn't see my video for pumpkin bread, I'll put a link to it at the top of the screen. I put out new videos every week, so consider subscribing and turning on your notifications. This way you never miss anything. So I'm just going to slice this bread up, and we don't want to cut it too thick or too thin because we want the custard to absorb into the bread. So about this size looks good. It's about 1-inch cubes. This way it's not too big, not too small. It's a good size for the custard to absorb right into the bread. This way it's nice and flavorful. And like I said, this pumpkin bread is a couple of days old. You always want to use older bread when making a bread pudding because the moisture is removed from the bread and that will absorb the custard much better. So we're going to take our baking dish here and I'm just going to line it with butter all around the sides. And if you don't have bread that's stale, you could just cube it up and put it in a 350-degree oven for about 10 to 15 minutes. And that'll remove most of the moisture and you'll be good to go. In a restaurant I worked at, we used a lot of brioche bread for various dishes. So I would always have scraps of brioche bread left over, and I would always turn that into bread pudding, and everyone absolutely loved it. And brioche is very light and buttery, but it's lacking flavor. So this pumpkin bread is just full of flavor. I absolutely love it. And I figured it was just a no-brainer to turn this into bread pudding. You could use banana bread here as well. That would work really nicely. That's a great thing about bread pudding. There's no one recipe. You could use all different types of bread. You could put all different spices and flavorings into your custard. You could put raisins, white chocolate, a lot of different things you could do. That's why I love bread pudding, because it's just a blank canvas and you can just make it your own. So I have all the pumpkin bread in here. Now we can start to make our custard. I'm going to take 3 tablespoons of butter, just put it in the microwave. Got 4 eggs here. I'll just put that to the side. A lot of recipes use not enough eggs, and to get a nice custard you really need enough eggs. So 4 is good here. I'm just going to take a bowl and add 2 cups of whole milk. And I'll add a tablespoon of some good vanilla. And to that I have 1/3 cup of sugar. Add right to our milk and vanilla. Add a teaspoon of salt. Bring back our melted butter. Pour that right in. Combine all that. And now we could crack in our eggs. One at a time. And that's basically the filling for our custard. I'm not going to add anything else to this because again, a pumpkin bread has a lot of flavor in it, so we don't want to go crazy with the flavor on the custard. We just want a nice consistency that'll coat the pumpkin bread nicely. Whisk all that together. That looks nice and homogeneous. We'll bring back our pumpkin bread here in our butter lined baking pan here. Make sure everything's pushed down and just pour this custard mixture right over our pumpkin bread. And it'll seem like it's too much custard, but it's really not, because the bread's really going to absorb it. And some of the bread sticking out on top, you want that, because that's going to crisp up and give a nice contrast and texture. And an important step here is to let this sit a half hour to an hour before baking. And it'll just give the custard a better texture. So I'm going to let this hang out at least an hour, and then we'll bake it in the oven. So this is after an hour. Let it hang out. And I have just a few things to finish this off. I have some fresh nutmeg. We'll grate that right over the top. And I love using freshly grated spices whenever I can. Got some fresh cinnamon as well. Put that right on there. And you could use any spices you like here. Clove, allspice, ginger, any flavors that you prefer. I also have some turbinado sugar. Just generously coat the top of that. And with these bread pieces sticking out on the top, It's going to crisp up with the sugar and give it a really great texture. And I have my oven preheated, and this should take about an hour in the oven to get that custard nice and set. And this took just over an hour in the oven, and you can see that looks beautiful. Nice color, the bread on top has a great crisp texture, the custard is set. We want to let this hang out for at least 15 minutes before we cut into it. This way everything gets settled, it cools down a bit, but you want to serve this warm. So we'll cut this about 15 minutes or so. We'll bring it back, everything's settled, it smells fantastic. I'll bring a plate over here. We'll just scoop a nice big piece right there. I love that corner piece of the bread pudding, that's the best part. And I made a caramel sauce for this, a nice salted caramel sauce to finish this off. Love those pieces on the top. And just spoon over our salted caramel. I mean, that looks gorgeous. And that does taste just as good as it looks. So really, give this pumpkin bread pudding a try. I guarantee you will not be disappointed. Thanks again for watching. Subscribe to the channel. We'll see you next time.